Oh, hello everyone, Dave from We Heart Giant Robots here, and don't worry, this isn't a face reveal video. I am way too paranoid for that shit. I did, however, get this handy dandy new microphone, and so you're all gonna need to put up with this cringy bullshit for a little while longer. Now, some of you will have noticed that late last year, our Metropolis video suddenly disappeared from the channel. That is because we were hit with multiple issues with that video, from it being age restricted, to it being limited to where we could show it, and then finally got hit by a bona fide copyright strike by Tezuka Productions, who own the rights to it. We tried to dispute that. That ultimately turned into a copyright strike on the channel, which sucks. Not ideal. I'm not going to blame YouTube for this one, to be honest. YouTube does have its issues, but copyright law is not really something that we can really fault them for. Copyright law is its whole other kettle of fish that would take too long to go into, shall we say. That being said, I'm kind of a fan of the video. I like the discussion that we had around it. I thought it was an interesting film that I want to tell more people about. So rather than giving Tezuka Productions the satisfaction of keeping the damn thing down, I've very spitefully gone back through and re-edited the whole thing so that we are not using any of their actual footage. We're just using still frames that I've animated slightly. It's amazing what spite can make you do sometimes. Truly is. Anyway, rather than rambling on with this cringy bullshit for a little while longer, I'm just gonna roll the video. Sorry that the first video of 2021 is a re-upload, but them's the fucking breaks, I guess. Welcome to YouTube, assholes. Anyway, see you in the next one, fuckers. So long.
Well, hello, Dave, and welcome to another episode of Where I Threatened to Glass You.
I don't think you've actually threatened to glass me before.
I'll fuck you up! Right, how are we going to start this shit?
Well, you're the one who picked this one, so...
Oh, shit. We watched Metropolis, but not the Fritz Lang version.
I watched that too, but that's because I'm a nerd.
Did you watch, like, which soundtrack version? Because isn't there, like, at least 14 versions of Metropolis?
Oh, God, everyone and their fucking dog who is a composer has done, like, something for Metropolis, but no, I watched the one that had a load of found footage that had been recut into it. Anyway, Rob, we watched the 2001 anime movie Metropolis.
Correct.
I quite enjoyed it. What did you think of it?
It's really fucking good.
It genuinely, I was surprised when you were saying it's like, oh, it's an early 2000s anime movie release that used a lot of CG.
I know, it can be specifically dated. It got delayed because of 9/11. That's how specific it can be delayed. How do we start with this film? Because, like, Metropolis is such a cultural, if you get what I mean, like, it's a very pop culture thing. Because, like, for God's sakes, like, from Lady Gaga to fucking Queen have references to fucking Metropolis. Yet Nick cunts watched it.
Not just Lady Gaga, like, Janelle Monáe, basically every single science fiction director, author, artist. It's a cultural phenomenon. It's like one of the first science fiction films ever created, and it's such a powerful piece of cinema that still actually holds up quite well to this day. And yeah, like you said, Nick has watched it, unless you're like a film school snob or like you did a film module at university, because why the fuck not?
Those people deserve to die.
I was one of those people, and I heartily concur.
Deserve to die.
And so what we have here is
the weeb version.
But what's interesting about this one is it's not only inspired by that original Fritz Lang production, it's also inspired by the Osamu Tezuka manga that was done, I'm not sure when he did the manga.
1949, if I remember rightly, but I've completely guessed. As forever, we have a horrible problem explaining the plot of this movie, but luckily this time I have the Blu-ray release of this movie, so we can read it from the back of the box. And this time I'm not going to annoy Dave.
Oh, you're actually going to read the right fucking box this time.
So I'll start from the beginning. Based on the classic comic created by revered manga artist and animator Tezuka, and written by anime legend Otomo, and directed by Rintaro, Metropolis is a spectacular film featuring stunning imagery and unforgettable characters. That's what the first paragraph says, Dave.
Cool.
Right? Got that down? Right.
I got
There's
that
a full
down.
stop
That's good.
at the end, right?
Very good.
In the industrial tri-level world of Metropolis, Duke Red is a powerful leader with plans to unveil a highly advanced robot named Tima. But Duke Red's violent son, Rock, distrusts robots and intends to find and destroy Tima. Lost in the confusing labyrinth beneath Metropolis, Tima is beginning a friendship with the young nephew of a Japanese detective. But when Duke Red separates the two innocents, Tima's life and fate of the universe is dangerously at stake. And then it goes on to tell you how great Eureka Entertainment is. And since we, every time we do this, I shill a different company. Eureka Entertainment's really good. You should buy their shit. They do Jackie Chan DVDs.
No. Stop it.
Stop it. Get some help.
Yeah, that's not a bad summary, to be honest, to attempt my own.
Oh no.
This movie is part dystopian science fiction, part... I mean, Fritz Lang definitely intended it to have a lot of socialist and class-based undertones, and they carry over a lot of that into this. Tezuka and Rintaro bring a lot of the Japanese elements into their own thing, so there's a bunch of Shintoism in there. There's some commentary on what makes a human, whether robots can be human, you know, all that good classical sci-fi questions that guys since, well, Fritz Lang, Asimov, all the rest of them have been pondering and such. It's some good shit.
Communism.
It's sort of... They're not quite as heavy with the communism thing that the original movie
If you knew anything
had.
about Tezuka's work, and I know you specifically sort of do and don't, he really fucking hated communism.
He wasn't a big fan, which is why it's interesting that he picked Metropolis to adapt, because it's very much sympathetic to a socialist outlook on it in the way they depict the working classes versus the decadence of the capitalists and stuff. So you have Duke Red, the big nasty capitalist, who has made this big tower that he's going to be able to control the world with or something. I don't know. He's also made a robot who's cute, and she's like a grill, but she's also a robot, but he has
And they
an
have a
adopted
moon
son
laser.
and a moon laser.
Well,
The machine is a moon laser.
Sun
Oh
laser?
yeah, it is.
It's the sun they shoot, isn't it?
It is the sun that they shoot, which is pretty
Why
cool.
the fuck would you shoot the sun?
Why not? It's
You'll
fucking lit.
literally die.
Yeah, but you'll die awesome.
No.
So he has a dipshit adopted son who really doesn't like robots, and he's like the leader or like a member of what is not the Nazi party. Why would you think they're the Nazi party? Just because they have red armbands doesn't mean they're the Nazi party, and they really don't like robots, and they run around,
who
you know,
does like
smashing robots and, you know, trying to preserve the white race. Definitely not Nazi things. This is not the Nazi party. Let's just stress that.
What's the fucking line in the film? It's like, that sounds kind of fascist, and everyone's like... It's like, alright.
They're not subtle with they're not Nazis. But yeah, our point of view characters as this detective and his dipshit nephew who've come looking for this crazy scientist who was doing all sorts of dodgy ass experiments, who's secretly working for Duke Red in order to create the cute robot grill who I mentioned. A load of shit happens. There's a revolution. There's lots of factions vying for control and power, and these two Japanese outsiders are kind of caught in the middle of it all, and a load of shit goes down. They shoot the sun with a laser. It's fucking lit. This is a good movie. Go watch it. What we have here, I think anyway, from what I've read, from what the director has said, he would disagree, but fuck him, the author's dead. This is basically a fusion between the original 1927 Metropolis and the 1949 Tezuka manga. He tries to incorporate a lot of these elements together, because what's really interesting about that original manga that Tezuka did is he'd not actually seen much of the original Metropolis, I remember reading. He'd like seen a lot of the posters, he'd seen some of the art and the design, he'd seen the very iconic robot from the movie, and he was like,
That's some cool shit.
I'm gonna make a story around that. And he did. And it's interesting, given that he hadn't actually seen all of the movie, that he managed to cover a lot of really similar themes to the original film, but he still did it in his own way and in his own style, and it's Tezuka's style, so it's a bit iconic. It's like he made Astro Boy or something.
I mean, there is that, and, you know, Princess Knight and Kimber the White Lion and Blackjack and...
Yeah.
Oh God.
It's like we are talking about one of the grandpappies of manga and anime in general. But what I really liked about this movie... The dude is very good. The dude is very good at what he did. What I love about this movie, though, is the fact that it is basically... Rintaro is the director of it. Now, Rintaro, you were telling me, and I've done a bit of my own reading on the chat, that guy is a bit of an OG as well. This is a guy who was directing some of the early episodes of Astro Boy with Tezuka. So this is a guy who collaborated and worked with the greats when anime was still in its infancy. This dude is a vet.
Also, he did Captain Harlock. And Captain Harlock's the tits.
And even more so, I remembered because I just checked here as well. If we're talking about the quality of the team behind this movie, the scriptwriter and the screenwriter is none other than Tachihiro Otomo, who is of course the author of Akira, which is also the tits.
He also did Steam Boy, and he's also the guy who did Memories, if I remember rightly. And if you haven't seen Memories, you deserve to be fucking killed.
Is that sci-fi anthology thing?
Yeah.
So this is another absolute vet of the anime and manga industry, and so all of these elements are coming together into this film that it seems nobody's fucking watched.
Yeah.
This is why we can't have nice things, ladies and gentlemen. This is why all you fuckers sitting around getting mad that they don't make many mecha series and great science fiction series anymore. This is fucking why. Because you gobshites don't fucking watch it. You're busy watching fucking Love Life.
Dave, stop berating our audience.
Fuck
the point. No, it's literally the point of why we do this show. It's like we pick things that are kind of obscure and weird, and then also do Gundam so that people subscribe to us.
So with that said, I guess we can move on to some positives now.
The fucking music.
Oh my goodness, it is good.
We regularly seem to pick shows that have great music.
Yeah, it's the thing. Yeah, so the music in this is... Oh man, how to describe this? It is eclectic, to say the least. It is very fusion in its approach to styles and how it wants to mash them together. Jazz is obviously a big influence throughout the whole thing. It's very much inspired by that 1920s jazz and swing kind of thing that obviously had a major impact on the original film.
If I remember rightly, the guy who did it is a jazz artist himself. And his other big anime thing that I can think of that he did is he did Nasu, somewhere in Andalusia.
Toshiyuki Honda is a Japanese jazz musician and composer. His father also a jazz musician and critic. He's not actually done a lot of soundtracks, but
he did Gunhead, which is the tits.
Yep, he did indeed do Gunhead. Yeah, the music, they managed to take all of those sort of elements that would harken back to, like, say, the original 1920s film and the the 1949 manga, and then they just start fucking with it and just bringing all of this weird shit into it. So there's a lot of almost drum and bass kind of big beat stuff going on with it as well. There's a lot
jungle
of...
is messy.
It is a bit jungle music in places as well, to be fair, man. It's just this great, really eclectic and varied soundtrack. There's these really, really sweeping orchestral bits, some great jazz sections, and then they'll just start doing some fucking weird stuff with it, and it's great. Like, the bit where it really hit for me was when the lab where Tima was created has been blown up, and then, like, all the robots that are like the little robot firefighters, who are fucking adorable, by the way, start pitching up, and then it, like, they manage to synergize the scene with the music, and so the robots, like, do this weird singing, chanting thing, and so that's incorporated into the soundtrack as they're putting out this fire, and the soundtrack itself is like this weird fusion between, like, these jazzy elements and this more techno kind of beat going on as well. It's fucking great.
Again, another reason why I picked this movie is because I'm like, oh, Dave likes music and is a bit of a faggot. Here we go.
Dave will rant about this for 5 minutes non-stop, and I'll just sit back and let him do that.
It's good being me.
I guess we can talk about, like, the art design and stuff as well, because this is a very, very pretty movie.
Fuck
and
yeah.
I don't say that lightly. Like, this is
a handsome motherfucker. This is like a fucking Bengal cat. Like, you want to touch that motherfucker. There's so much thought put into all the design. Like, when it comes up saying where the different zones are, and you can see, like, the higher up in the zones it is, the nicer the area looks, and it's just all this background design that in a lot of films doesn't fucking matter, and it wouldn't fucking matter in this film, but there are just these nice little touches to everything to show that it's a real world and it exists, and it's, like, decaying and it's decadent, and it's a good movie.
The only, like, I guess a comparison I could make in terms of its attention to its detail, in terms of its architecture, is like maybe Blame, or like some other series by Tsutomu Nihei, or however you say his name, because he's originally an architect, so he has this really big focus on his design of his cities and stuff. But that's the level of attention to detail these guys have presented with Metropolis.
Thing I think I can compare it to is, like, if you've read any Judge Dredd, for example. Judge Dredd has some incredibly well done with the blocks and the design of everything, with how it's showing, like, a nice area and a shit area, and how close and that can be to these other areas. And, like, this does the same thing, where it's like a city built upon a city, and it's just...
Like, what I love about it is each section of the city that you visit with the characters and you see is really visually distinct. Like, not just in terms of, like, color palette and the general vibe of it, in terms of, like, the buildings that you see and how they're designed. So the upper levels of the city, the fancy ones, are very Art Nouveau, very 1920s. It's very gold and glitzy. It's like it's stepped out of, like, I don't know, The Great Gatsby or something like that. The working class human areas, it kind of reminds me of, like, is it the Hidden City that they had for a while? Like, all of these buildings stacked on top of one another in, I think it was China somewhere?
It's the walled city or something? Is it not Kowloon?
Yeah, the Kowloon walled city. It looks very much like that in terms of it's lots of disparate sort of stuff stacked on top of each other. Lots of corrugated iron and rusty, but still very vibrant and colorful in places as well.
As a man who's been to Kowloon walled city, it's pretty fucking cool.
So, yep. Art design, great. It's really distinct. All of the characters, you can obviously thank Tezuka for this because they're clearly taking their cues from the master himself.
Cheers, lad.
They're very distinct in how they look and how they act. I'm gonna ramble a bit about the animation because this film reminded me of something that Demolition D was talking about all the way back in the day in terms of how you can see how well a budget has been spent and utilized in a film. Some productions will try and go really big with everything and have like the biggest cool scenes and lots of awesome particle effects and flashy imagery. And then some films and productions will try and do it in a more subtle and clever way in terms of how they animate their characters, how well they move, how naturally they act, and how they appear and emote on screen. The whole time I was watching this and seeing the characters emote and interact with one another, I realized how well this has been done and how well they use their animation budget to actually create these very human feeling characters and human acting characters. They felt very natural in the way they interacted with each other, down to just like the way they blinked and how their facial expressions change. And that's not something you always see in anime. Anime is a very stylized genre. It doesn't necessarily play as much focus to that sort of thing. So when you see that done and done really, really well, it really sticks out. And so this is a movie that did that brilliantly and yet could still do all the big glitzy, flashy shit as well. So yeah, I really enjoyed that part of it.
Let's talk about some negatives. Oh.
I don't really have any. Like, we could do the usual fucking rant about how we don't like CG.
Oh no, I didn't notice it at all in this film. Like
I did.
Don't get me wrong. I know there was CG in the film, and I know it was CG, but like, I kind of forgive things when it's not shit.
Yeah.
So like, if everything's CG, I'm like, I can ignore it. My main issue whenever we watch anything with CG is that it's so fucking jarring to me. Whilst in this film, I didn't notice it.
This is one of those early attempts where they tried to incorporate both like your hand-drawn traditional elements with CG elements, and they don't necessarily do it well, but they're one of the guys trying it first, so they're pioneers in that sense as well.
And I mean, this series was made by the guys who made Beyblade, so it's a 10 out of 10 anime as far as I care.
Go Madhouse.
Are we ready for Rob's only complaint about this thing?
Hit me with your complaint.
I just don't like the story. Like, it's fucking boring, man. Like, I think this is genuinely one of the better sci-fi animes. I think it's a great piece of art. I like watching it. I think the soundtrack's fantastic. The voice acting is amazing from both the dub and the fucking original. I think it's really well done. I tend to do that. Every time I've watched this film, and even this time when I've watched it again for the review, I literally just sat and read other Tezuka manga whilst I put on the dub. Like, you kind of just didn't pay attention.
Lazy bastard.
Correct, but whatever. At least I admit it on the fucking show.
Yeah, that's true.
The only reason I think it's boring is because, like, I've seen it before. It uses all these other tropes, and it's not that it's boring. Like, I'm not knocking it for that. I genuinely think this is a great movie, but we got to have at least one criticism.
Yeah, so it's more that you found it a bit drawn out in places and a bit
like it's
overdone.
It's like my same problem I have with watching, like, it's like when you've watched all of Star Trek and you go back and watch them again, you realise how often they repeat episodes, and it's like, I get it. You've discussed this already.
There are definitely some points, what I will say, and this is criticism that I've seen popping up elsewhere from some of the reviews I've read from people. Most of them are fucking terrible, but a common element that I've seen is that the film can be a bit pondersome, it can be a bit slow. It likes to have these very long, drawn-out scenes where it shows you beautiful landscape scenery as they pan across the city in its different levels. Now, I'm a big geek for that sort of shit, and I love that shit, but maybe if someone watching this is like, right, that's great, can you show me the cool stuff now?
It's basically like, you've gone from watching Redline to watching that fucking TNG episode where the guy's on trial because his dad's like a Romulan or something, and like, where it's this big philosophical discussion of the crimes of the father versus the fucking crimes of the son. And it's just like, I'm done.
Yeah, can we go back to the fast cars now? No, you must ponder the nature of original sin. This movie has your big capitalist nasty people. You've got the human underclasses, but then underneath all of that as well, you have these machines and robots, which weren't so much of an element in the original in the way that they're used here. Like the machines were this weird other force that was misleading people and putting them astray, whereas in this they are very much the underclass.
Isn't the original, the machines are like a Moloch style character? Like
sort of?
Like, I'm meaning Moloch in the terms of like, it's something you sacrifice things to. And it's kind of interpreted that humanity is sacrificing itself to industrialization within the movie.
That's kind of what they're going for, yeah.
Like an original. I'm not meaning this one, because this doesn't have any of that. Like, this is nothing.
The original movie has all of these weird kind of out-of-body scenes where the main character is basically having these vivid hallucinations of like workers being fed into a machine that is also a demon, and like this Mayan Mesopotamian pyramid and stuff. It's a fucking freaky ass movie. There's a lot of weird shit in that.
There's some kind of like interdimensional shape-shifting vampires. They're sucking the blood of the working class people.
Alex Jones, please go.
Globalist. One of the things that is kind of subtle in the movie as well is that is tied into the whole Shinto thing, because these two characters are from Japan, so they believe the robot has a soul because it's animated. So the reason they treat it like a human is that cultural thing. Whilst Metropolis is set in generic America. So like, it's maybe not only just an attack on the idea that humans don't like robots, it's maybe also an attack on Americans.
It gives you the brain thunks. It's good.
Really gets the noggin jogging.
Really gives the noggin a jogging. So let's talk about Nazis.
Listen, don't mention the war. I mentioned it once, but I think I got away with it all right.
Because there's like a bunch of Nazis in this movie that are not Nazis, but they're kind of Nazis.
Well, the film describes them as fascists.
Yeah, Ban straight up goes, yeah, they're pretty fash, aren't they? People are like, shut up, stop spoiling the subtext, Ban. He's like, no, but seriously, they're pretty fash, right?
That's specifically the Marduk party, isn't it?
Yeah, the Marduk party.
What does Marduk mean something? If I remember rightly, like
Marduk is also from Mesopotamia, actually. He was the chief god of the city of Babylon and the national god of Babylonia. As such, he was eventually called Bel, or Lord. So yeah, that kind of nationalist subtext, I guess. After conquering the monster of primeval chaos, Tiamat, he became Lord of the gods of heaven.
I got the character's called Tiamat!
Subtext, to go back to the whole Nazi thing. My thinking with that, though, is Fritz Lang, obviously, after creating Metropolis, had a bit of a run-in with Goebbels in particular and the Nazi party.
If I remember rightly, isn't Fritz Lang, I can't remember what the word they used for it, but it's like he was born a Jew, but he's raised as a Catholic.
He basically had to run away from Germany I can't remember when he fled. He originally fled to Paris and then he ran off to Hollywood.
Isn't that like 33? Like, because the Nazis came to power like 32 or something.
1933, he got the fuck out of there. They were banning his movies. They liked his early stuff. They particularly liked Metropolis because they considered themselves socialist, and so there was all of those elements going on there. But then they were also like, we kind of feel like you're sort of having a go at us with some of your movies, particularly Testament of Dr. Mabuse. And so they were banning it, and they were probably gonna come after him. Oh, I didn't realize this. His wife and like his screenwriter was actually a sympathizer with the Nazis.
Yeah.
Jesus, that sucks.
Is that von Harbaugh or whatever it is?
Yeah, Thea von Harbaugh.
Well, all you need to know is the von bit, Dave. Come on there.
A bit of a clue in that, yes. I definitely think that, and to go back to the Marduk party and the Nazi thing, I definitely think that they were introducing that as a bit of a homage to the experiences that Fritz Lang had, and, obviously Nazis not great as people, and so they're always a good villain that you can have in your story. It's a shame that more people haven't watched this, because I feel like this is a movie that a lot of people can get a lot of different things out of. I think it's a very beautiful film. It's a very impressive film in terms of its score and its visuals. The story maybe isn't the most complicated, but it's still got some stuff to get your teeth into. There's still some stuff you can enjoy.
Have we talked about the fact that Roger Ebert once called this one of the best animated movies ever made? I'm just glad I finally got you to watch it so you can understand why I'm so angry because no one's watched this movie.
I guess to conclude, Metropolis is one of those amazing movies that not enough people have seen. You should really consider becoming one of those people who has seen it, because
I'm really looking
think you'd
forward to
probably
us
quite
getting
enjoy
another
it.
300 views on this video because it's something that no one's watched before. Yay.
Or it'll be like one of those really weird ones where like 2,000 people have watched it and we were confused.
Oh, you know what we should do? We should just put Gundam in the fucking title. See what happens.
Gundam Metropolis. It'll lure some sucker in. I'm desperate enough. I don't give a shit anymore. Give me your goddamn views, motherfuckers.
Pay us.
Speaking of which, Robert, why don't you tell the nice people watching that they should consider liking, favoriting, and subscribing, and maybe even pressing the little bell button, because that's apparently a thing you need to do now. It's not just a case of pressing subscribe anymore. YouTube thinks it knows what you want to watch better than you do, and it's probably not this channel.
Please do the things Dave's just listed, otherwise he will start my chemo treatment and I'll die.
I stopped those 6 months ago.